Hey everybody, happy Friday. Man, it is cold. It is so stinking cold here in Pennsylvania. I am not happy about it. It'd be nice to see where everybody's tuning in from. If you can put in the comments. Hi Donna. Boy, it is cold. Okay. So feel free to put in the chat if you have questions related to your bees or just questions about beekeeping. I just wanted to talk about winter things. I mean, there's not a lot going on beekeeping wise. I just moved here, so I don't have any bees. Have to wait till the springtime. It has been in the 30s. Like the high for the day is like 34. Yesterday, the wind was so strong, cloudy. The only good thing about living, about this cold weather is that my kids, like I have to wake them up at 7:30 in the morning. They are snoring at 7:30. I've never seen my son, like very rarely, other than when he had like COVID and was really sick, sleep past like 6:30 in the morning. And then all of a sudden we moved to Pennsylvania and this kid is snoring still at 7:30 in the morning. My daughter, who's 3, was like, "Why are you waking me up in the middle of the night?" And I was like, it's morning. She's like, no, it's not. It's nighttime. And I was like, trust me, it's the sun is kind of up. It's just hiding and it's cold. My son always complained about the birds. There was this bird in the palm tree outside his window, and I have tried to go out there with a squirt gun. I've gone out there and tried to like shake the tree, yell at it, throw stuff up at the bird, and it would just go to different branches on the tree or to different trees. Um, and so it was just always waking up to like this like chorus of wild birds, and now it's just cold and dark and you want to hibernate forever. We are in eastern Pennsylvania, about an hour west northwest of Philadelphia, in Chester County. One thing I wanted to mention, where is it? I got this. Pardon our boxes and everything's still a mess here, room by room, trying to move into the house. But this house has no storm windows, and there were a couple storm doors, but they weren't even on the house. There was just like no screen door or anything. There's no curtains or curtain rods, and there's just windows everywhere. So we've just been trying to get the chimney service so that we can have some fires and put weather stripping around the doors, put the storm doors on, got some plastic to stick around some of the windows, curtains, all that kind of stuff has been like taking over our lives right now so that we are not freezing. But anyway, on that note, Viver sent me, I made a video last year. They sent me an extractor for free in exchange for making a video. I ended up selling that extractor after that one extraction I used with it, but it worked well. And I even was able to spin my frames that had no foundation using that extractor, because it had that variable speed, kind of like those Vitamix blenders where you just like slowly crank up the speed. And so I never broke the comb in it. And they emailed me and asked if they could send me a beehive, and then they wanted to send me one of these things. What is this? It's a thermal camera. I forget, they have another name that they call it. It's kind of pricey. Oh, they call it a handheld thermal imager. And so this is pretty cool because you can tell whether your bees are alive and where they are in the hive with one of these things. Now, some people say that you can knock on the hive and you take a stethoscope or put your ear up to it, and if you knock on it a little bit, you'll be able to hear like some buzzing. But this thing will tell you where the heat is. And so, since the bees should be clustered up producing heat, it'll tell you where they are in the hive. And that's helpful to see, because if at this point they're already up in the second box, that's a little bit of a problem, and you really better start checking on the food if they're still down in the first box, and that's better off. So you can like see these little dots to see like where the high and lows are. We were actually using it in our house to see where the drafts are, how bad the windows were. You can see like where the heat is going up through the, what is that called? It's not a pipe, but anyway. So they sent me this, and I'm going to be making a video this weekend. They sent me a starter beehive. I'm going to use one of those. It's pretty much the cheapest beehive you can buy. They sell it through Amazon. And then I am going to get another beehive from a person in my bee club here in Chester County. And it's called the Keeper's Hive, and I'm really excited to try this thing. It's pretty cool. It's kind of an alternative for people that don't want to lift heavy things. You keep just brood in one box using the Demarest method. Is that how you pronounce it? And you don't take the supers off. You don't lift any boxes. He like really just said he wanted to make beekeeping enjoyable and comfortable, and he just pulls up a stool and sits at his box and doesn't have to lift any heavy supers off to check the brood. And he's been beekeeping for a while, and really knows his stuff. So I'm going to interview him, and then one of my hives is going to be in that I'll share with you guys through the Beekeeper's Diary. And one of my hives will be in the cheapest beehive you can use, that Viva Hive. And one of them will be in that beeswax coated hive from Glenna Farms. And so if you're really curious how your bees are doing, and it's really not warm enough, often enough for the bees to be coming and going and going on a cleansing flight, then one of these thermal cameras might be of interest to you. One person says, curious about when or if to insulate hives and auxiliary feed. So when it comes to insulating hives, it's just it's up to you whether you want to insulate hives, because the thing is that when you insulate your hives, you put like a bee cozy on it or something of that sort. You prevent the hive from warming up from the sun on those nice sunny days. So it really depends on how cold it is getting in your area. And if your beehive is one of, like pine, one of those cheaper woods that's not really going to give your hive natural insulation, then one of those cozies is great. But I would just put it on when it's like you're going to get a series of cold days. It's going to be really windy for a while. But I wouldn't just like take it on and off every time you have a sunny day, or leave it on all the time, unless you're in an area where it's like really, really like well below freezing and really windy. Because otherwise, the sun can really help to warm up the hive and encourage the bees to leave and go on that cleansing flight. When it comes to feeding your bees, you want feed in your hive. Before you even close it up for winter, you should really be putting that feed in the hive, other than the honey, up on top, under your lid. You really just want there to be something. You want to make sure there's a way for the bees to get there. So if it's like candy or something, make sure there's like a gap somewhere so that the candy's not taking up the entire space. You want to make sure the bees can get up to it. And you want there to be something for the bees. You can literally just take a bag of dry white granulated sugar and pour that in there, or you can make it candy. You can buy candy. The bee club I joined, they buy it in bulk, and they put that, people can buy that and put that in their hives. And it's not only great backup feed, there's no reason to put it in later when you think that they need it. You put it in when it's warm enough to put it in. Like here it's going to be going up to the 50s and sunny. This week it's been super windy and cold, so that's not a good time to do it. Wait till you have that warm weather, like in the 50s and low wind and sunny, and go do it then. And you don't want to bother the brood. Just lift off the lid and go throw that in there if you haven't yet. You want that backup feed. There's no reason to not have that in there right from the start, even when there is ample honey on the hive. It's not going to, go bad. It's not going to get infested with small hive beetles or anything when it's that cold out. And then, you can continue to just check on it and make sure that you don't have to put more in. It's not only good for food for the bees, but it will absorb the condensation that might drip off the lid and prevent it from dripping onto your cluster. And then that condensation also is good. It gets absorbed by that sugar, and that helps the bees. It's good. The bees need this moisture, and it probably helps them digest that and eat that sugar, I would think. Philip Winter says it's been in the teens and 20s in the mornings. How can I tell if my bees are okay? I can still hear them. Well, if you can hear them, then that's good. It means that they're alive. As long as there's ventilation and they have food up top. There's not really much else, as far as I'm aware, that you can do to make sure that they're okay. One person's asking the best place to buy bees from. The best place to buy bees is really to just go to your local. This is what I did. I joined the local association. First meeting I went to, I said hi and introduced myself, and there were people in the chat that sell bees, and then there are other people that recommended bees. I went to festival at a local farm. There was somebody at a table that was talking about pollinators. He gave me the name of a couple places he recommends to buy bees. You just want to go local. The worst place, like the last resort, should be having bees shipped to you. It's really common for them to arrive dead. Mail carriers do not know how to handle live bees, so they can arrive dead. They might be in a post office where it's really cold overnight, or they could be in a truck all day long where it's getting really cold in there. Or it could be just really hot in there. It's really common for them to arrive dead, so you really want to buy them locally if possible. Yikes. Trevor says it's 1.09. I'm assuming that's Celsius. I cannot even pronounce that town or city in England. Oh my goodness, that is a very long name. Michael wants to know why the cheap hive. I'm just curious. I'm curious to see how it fares compared to other hives. So they contacted me and asked me if they could give it to me. So, why not? But I'm also curious to see how it handles compared to other hives. When I made my boxes, I made them out of pine. So they're made out of the same thing. It's not like, plywood or anything. So I wanted to see how that does in comparison. I'm considering also getting I forget the material it's made out of. It's the apame hives. They're like a poly something. I might buy one of those hives just to compare them to each other. I just really like to see how they fare compared to each other. In Hawaii, that stuff didn't matter. The temperature didn't vary by more than 10 degrees in the daytime, and it was like, maybe in the 50s in the evenings in the wintertime. So I'm really curious how different woods and beeswax coated hives versus non beeswax coated hives, uh, you know, how they deal with the cold weather in comparison. Gabriel wants to know, what did you say the candy is called? Yeah, some people just call it candy. It's really just like sugar and water, a little bit of vinegar. It Some people will purchase it. It's really just called candy. Some people buy fondant. I don't know if there's anything different between the two. It's all just mostly sugar and water. There's a ton of recipes online. If you're in my class, I have the recipe in there. In my all about feeding video on my channel, there's a recipe for making candy. Um, it's pretty similar. It's all just mostly sugar and water. Linda says, I had sugar water in my 3 hives, but only one hive had hundreds of yellow jackets floating in it. It's too cold now. I'm in West Virginia to clear them out. Yikes. Hundreds of yellow jackets. Well, I guess that's one way to kill yellow jackets. Glenn wants to know, can I talk on the idea of feeding bees honey? Well, you definitely should have honey in the hive. The honey that they harvested and brought in themselves, you want in your boxes where the bees are. The box that the bees are in, and there should be another box on top of that, and that should have honey in it. But then up above that, you want there to be a backup feed of candy or just plain dry white sugar. It's really just the bees usually move upwards. So it was more so a problem when I had a top bar hive, because the bees were just like moving, just clustered up in one area and then just like moved. And I had an issue with them not having enough food. And the vertical style hives, they usually go upward. So it's just, you could have honey still in your hive, but if the bees are moving upward, then you still want there to be backup sugar up above your honey, just in case it doesn't warm up enough for the bees to be able to break that cluster and go searching for honey. And so that this cluster is slowly moving together and eating the food. Yes, I said it's okay to pour sugar into the hive. Like on that inner cover, below your outer cover, and you should have, some kind of moisture board, insulation, something under that outer cover to help prevent condensation and to absorb whatever condensation. And then below that, you're going to want some food, and that can be just taking a bag of dry white sugar. And condensation will drip on it, but it'll get absorbed by this sugar, or you can make candy or buy it. And it's really just different people's preferences, what they like to do. And that is a backup to the honey. It's really just the amount of honey that your bees need really just like varies depending on your winter. It's not just how long the winter is, but you could just have a really rainy spring and then there's not enough food for the bees, and maybe it's not warm enough for you to really open up the hive and check in on them. and to give them syrup. It could be that the warms up and cools down and warms up and cools down throughout the winter time. And so when that happens, the bees, you know, break the cluster, they leave the hive in search of food to go on cleansing flights. And every time they break this cluster and they leave the hive, they are using up energy. And when they use up energy, they need to eat food to get more energy. And so that can cause bees to eat up a lot of the honey that you gave them. And so the different kinds of winters that you have can really determine how much food that the bees need over winter time. So you always just want to keep an eye on how much food they have and have a backup and check on it. So right now, go out to your beehive and tip it a little bit to get a feel for how much it weighs. And you want to continue to just like tip the hive and get a feel for how the weight is changing. And you can also just peek under the cover once in a while on those, warmer, low wind, sunny days to see where they're at. You can get one of these things. I should really shut this off and realize it's still. To see where the cluster's at, if they've already moved up high to where the candy is, or if they're still down low where the honey is. Jimmy says, I left in some honey, but also put sugar on top of their cover. One piece of insulation, have some honey frames, absconded hives. So when can I try and give them to these bees in the freezer now? Well, it really depends on what your weather is like. If it's cold out, don't 65 degrees Fahrenheit and your bees are clustering up. If it is that temperature or below, or that temperature and windy or cloudy, do not bother the boxes that the bees are in, or really the box above it. I wouldn't put frames of honey into your hive like if it's already like really cold out. I would wait until springtime and then you can feed the bees some honey. Or just wait till it's warm enough out that you're opening the hives, and when you're splitting hives or whatever, you can give them some frames of honey. I wouldn't bother the bees if it's cold out and they're like in that cluster. Linda asks, what's the name of the lightweight hive you're getting? Vevor, Vevor, sent me a hive. I haven't checked the kind of what it is. I'm assuming it's pine. It looks like a regular beehive, just like the same boxes I got from Date Ant and the same boxes I bought from Ant Lake. They all look the same. They are beeswax coated, but it's a thin coat of beeswax. The hive is like $100 and something for 2 brood boxes, a super, telescoping outer cover, inner cover, bottom board, entrance reducer, 30 frames, and 30 sheets of foundation. And that's on Amazon. BS asked me how long I've been beekeeping. About 13 years. Trevor says, I have a Varroa mesh floor on my hive. Should I keep the Varroa tray in or leave it out for added ventilation in the winter? Leicestershire. Okay. I'm not familiar with Varroa trays. I've had small hive beetle trays, like the screen with the tray below it to collect the small hive beetles. I don't know if it's the same thing for Varroa mites. So for winter time, for added ventilation, having that mesh on the bottom is great. Yeah, like you can take the tray out, but the one I have, it's in the video I just posted in the Beekeeper Diary episodes. It's one of the playlists on my channel, or you can just go to the more recent videos, I show it, but it's a screened bottom. I took the tray out, and in the winter time, what I plan to do is it came with a piece of corrugated plastic that has like a grid on it, which is used for trying to do a varroa mite test to see how many varroa mites your hive has, which is a terrible way to um, do a mite test, but it's really just corrugated plastic and you can put it under. But what I plan on doing is taking that and cutting it a little bit shorter. So there is about a half an inch to an inch gap where the screen is open on either side. And so this corrugated plastic will cover most of the screened bottom on my hive, but there will just be a gap around it on the two sides and the back so that condensation can drip out of the hive and won't pool up on the bottom, as well as give it extra ventilation in case that's needed. In case, like, like the lower entrance gets blocked up with dead bees or snow or whatever. So that's what I plan on doing. It's a great way to have extra ventilation, and it's on the bottom, so you don't have to worry about the heat that the cluster's producing escaping through it, the way you would with an upper entrance. Jeff wants to know what temperature you stop feeding sugar water and feed with solid sugar. Really, once the bees are clustering up, 65 Fahrenheit, once you're closing that hive up for winter, you take the sugar water out. I read one place that you don't want to feed them syrup once it's too cold out, that they're not really flying and can't really go on a cleansing flight. When you don't want condensation building up in the hive from that sugar. But the theory is that if they're going to be eating that sugar water, they need to go on a cleansing flight. Other places said that that's not really a problem, but either way, I've always gone by the rule that once it is cold enough out that the bees are not actively coming and going from the hive and they are lightly clustering up, you want that syrup out. And that's really, by that point, you can't open the hive to put the candy in. So you really want to swap out the syrup for the candy before it's so cold out that you don't want to be disturbing the bees because they're clustered up. So well before it's 65 degrees Fahrenheit out. Or, at that point when you have a day that it's 65 and then you have a few days where it's 72 and then a day where it's in the 50s and then it's in the 80s again. You find that day when it's in the 80s and then you go and you swap it out. Hold on. What's the best ventilated suit? I've actually never bought a bee suit before. And I don't really plan on buying one. My first year beekeeping, I bought a veil and I just wore heavy jeans that were baggy and a long sleeve, big long sleeve shirt that was cotton. And then in Hawaii, I wore a t-shirt and shorts a lot of the time. I don't recommend shorts because the bees will climb up your shorts. It's very distracting. I have literally gone into my house and pulled my pants down and had like 2-3 bees just fly out. But I've never bought a suit before. The farm I worked for, they did buy me a suit, and it was the cheapest suit you could get from Man Lake, and it was okay. It was non-ventilated whatsoever. It was like $100, and it was okay for when we were moving bees or harvesting honey, or when they were just really angry as a backup to have, and you just deal with being hot. But I am not a good person to talk to about suits because I've never had a good one before. Cheryl says polyester styrene, or is it styrene? Yeah, that's what those Apame hives are made out of. I am thinking about getting one of those just to see how it is. One of my students had issues with a lot of condensation in that hive. Um, but I'm curious to see how it does compared to the wooden hives. Fred says, "How about just putting white sugar on the inner cover?" Yeah, it's will you put solid white sugar on the inner cover when it's cold out, but the sugar water is for when it's warmer out and the bees aren't clustered and it's well above 65. And the big time you do that, you feed them the syrup is in the springtime. Once it warms up and it's like well above 65 and they're coming and going, that's a really good time to feed them syrup. And that's because I go through this in an all about feeding video on my channel and give you all the recipes and stuff. But so I never used to feed my bees. And the farm I worked for went through organic certification, so they weren't allowed to feed their bees. And the other farm I worked for never fed their bees, so I never worked with anybody who did it. But it is beneficial to feed your bees syrup once it warms up and the bees are actively coming and going and can go on their cleansing flights and do their business outside the hive, because you feed them like a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar to water by volume, and you want to add those other things to it so that it helps them digest it, like the honeybee healthy. You can add some pollen into it and amino boosters, and that simulates a nectar flow. So that helps your hive grow faster, because when there's that nectar coming in, it's really important you don't just stick a frame, because this is what I used to do. I used to just put frames of honey into my hive, and that's fine so that they're not starving. But if you want your bees to build comb, and then the queen to start laying, you want to simulate the nectar flow. So you're just tricking the bees, because they're very conservative honeybees. They are not going to build comb, and the queen is then not going to lay eggs, and the population is not going to increase if they don't think there's food coming in, because the bees have to eat a lot of honey in order to produce beeswax. And they are not going to eat their precious honey and potentially starve to death unless they think there's more nectar coming in and honey is being produced. So you give them syrup, you fake a nectar flow. They think that a nectar flow is going on, flowers are blooming. It's really important you also give them pollen patties, or put, that, I guess it's dehydrated pollen you buy on bee supply sites, not at the Whole Foods or anything kind of pollen. And you're simulating this nectar flow. So when the bees think a nectar flow is going on, they're going to start producing comb and eating up their honey to produce this comb, and then the queen's going to start laying. And it's just like this process. They need all of these things to happen in order for the next stage to happen, which is that the queen starts laying. The queen starts laying, then the population increases, and when she starts laying, then you have eggs, and then the eggs turn into larvae, and the larvae need pollen. So you really need to make sure you're also giving them pollen so you don't stress out the bees and they're like, oh man, we have all these babies and nothing to feed them. So then this sugar syrup is just what kind of gets the bees going a little bit sooner than they would otherwise. Otherwise, they're going to wait till a nectar flow starts. And in the springtime, it could be a while. It could, you could really have like some super rainy days, or it could be really cold to start really for a while before it warms up. Or you might just be in an area where you don't have a lot of spring blooming flowers. It might just be like your big nectar flow isn't until like May or June. And so you build up your hive early, and then when that nectar flow does start, now you already have a hive with a good population, the queen's already laying, and now you have lots of bees that are at the right age to go out and gather all this food and bring it back to the hive. And so that just helps your hive grow faster and just be ready for that nectar flow. They will be okay without it. I mean, they can survive all on their own without it. They can do it on their own. But as a beekeeper, it's like one of those things you can do to help them out. And it's like, well, why not? If you can make this a little bit better for them, then why not help them out and give them a head start on the season? Um, Michael says, it's my first year going into winter with only one hive. Opted not to harvest and hopefully allow my girls to enjoy their honey this winter. Should I be thinking about bringing in a new queen and moving some of my existing frames into a new brood box? I mean, at this point, no. You just leave them be and see how they do. But I mean, for springtime, yeah, like you. I hopefully, if your bees survive the winter, then you can split them and buy a new queen and have two hives come next year. Gabriel wants to know what kind of insulation you use for the cover. Well, I really can't give you brands because I haven't had to insulate my hive in 12, 11 years. Um, you can just get moisture boards that you can put under the lid. There's, I forget the name of it, but it's kind of like a bubble wrap sort of thing that you can put under the lid as well. But I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I've always recommended to put a moisture board under there for the insulation and then to also just, you know, cut back on that condensation that's forming. Glenn says, I have extra honey. Can I put it in a feeder in the hive instead of sugar syrup? Well, I mean, I kind of answered that question. You can if they're starving, or if you're splitting hives, you can use that honey as feed, but you still want to make syrup to simulate a nectar flow. Even syrup that's too much sugar and not enough water and not liquidy enough won't simulate a nectar flow and won't get the bees to really start building comb and stuff the way they would if you gave them a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar to water. Chigger Hill Adventures says that he has the Beaver Hive. It's okay. The building it was easy. Joints need glue and nails. Oh, that's right. I was just at Home Depot today. I forgot to get wood glue. I used to live less than a mile from Lowe's. And now I'm in a whole nother town from the closest hardware store. And it's really annoying. And the fitment is not high quality. Bees are doing fine in it and seems to be of acceptable quality. That's kind of just what I assume with their products. It is not the highest quality, but it does what they say it does. Um, so, you know, the thing is that I have bought a lot of stuff from Man Lake and Daydant over the years, and the quality from them, I haven't noticed a difference from. I like to support the farms here, the companies here. I mean, they're not farms, the companies here in the US over buying directly from out of the country. But, if they're just buying this stuff from the same exact places and then just marking it up and then shipping it out. I don't really see the difference. Jack says, when temperatures are 5 to 10 degrees or colder for a period of time, do the bees just freeze up or totally slow down their movement? They will vibrate their flight muscles and produce heat. They do slow down, I believe. Their bodies just kind of use up less energy. But I mean, come January, for a lot of people, the queen's already laying eggs. So they really need to produce heat to keep the brood warm and the queen warm. She's usually in the center of that cluster. Jimmy wants to know how the queen cleanses in winter. Good question. I have no idea. I don't. Hmm. I doubt she goes on a cleansing flight. She doesn't leave. She is the only bee that doesn't leave the hive to defecate at all. The bees clean her. So I'm guessing she just never goes on a cleansing flight her entire life. Some people will buy bee queens with a clipped wing to, they say discourages swarming. Um, so, and you can get away with that. I've never done that. Feels weird, but you can get away with that because the queen doesn't leave the hive to go to the bathroom the way that the other bees do. So, yeah, I don't really think that that's a problem. Curious quote he has recommends the guardian suits. She says that I recommended taking off gloves, and a timid beekeeper might try removing one glove and replacing it with a thin latex glove, and she tried it and felt like she made a leap as a beekeeper. My first time wearing no gloves, I got stung 8 times on that one hand, and I put the glove back on like within 2 minutes. But then I just stopped wearing gloves. It definitely helped working at a farm and being out there 5 days a week, year round. After 7 months of working at this internship, you know, I went from my hand swelling up and not even being able to like crack an egg for breakfast the next morning after I was stung once or twice on my hand to not reacting whatsoever, other than the fact that it hurts when the stinger goes under your skin. It didn't, like, my body doesn't react at all. So I developed an immunity to the venom really fast, beekeeping year round and doing it for a job. Um, but yeah, you can start. I would definitely recommend wearing less clothing. You can have a suit if it makes you feel comfortable to start, but instead of working towards trying to find a ventilated suit for the heat of summer, I would really just start taking off all of the protective gear. And unless you're dealing with Africanized bees or you just have a really angry hive for some reason that never calms down and is healthy but just has the genetics for being aggressive. For most people, you really can just get away with wearing like a t-shirt and pants. Just do not wear black leggings. I don't. So many women have showed up to my beekeeping class in black leggings, and I'm like, why? And I put it on there, wear baggy jeans or other kinds of heavy pants, loose fitting clothing, do not wear black, and still people show up. And man, that one woman, she just got stung like 5 times. She was a good sport about it, but She was wearing black leggings, and that's really stung her. You can also try wearing a jacket. Because the whole suit's really unnecessary. You just get some baggy pants at a thrift store that you really cheap and you don't care about, and you can wash them easily, and it's not this whole big huge suit that you have to wash. And it's and wear the jacket when you need to. I did like having the Hive tool pocket in my suit. That was just the best part about wearing a suit, was the Hive tool pocket. I might make a Hive tool pocket on some pairs of pants. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I did try one of those keychains where you can has this like thing you can attach something to it, and it just like coils back up into the keychain so you can clip it onto your pocket. That just doesn't. It's still kind of a pain in the butt. I just like having a pocket to put my Hive tool in when I need to. Maybe a little tool belt would be nice. So let me know if you have any other questions. So right now, if it's cold out where you are, like it is for me, you don't want to be opening up the hive and bothering the brood. You can always peek under the lid to check on food storage. At this point, it's a little early to have to check on it. You can get one of these things, the thermal cameras, to see where the bees are at and to make sure that they're still alive. Or you can put your ear up to the hive, use a stethoscope, and give a little knock, see if you can hear where they're at. It's really good to just keep eye on the weight of the hive, give it a little bit tip, and that'll give you an idea of how much food they have and how it is decreasing. And one really important thing you want to do is make sure that they have adequate ventilation. So bees are going to be dying like crazy right now. And you really just want to take your hive tool and scrape out the dead bees out that lower entrance, like very often. And, you'll get a feel for it. If you go out there 3 days later and there's nothing, then you don't have to go out there every 3 days. You go out there after 5 days and it's so many bees that are blocking up that lower entrance, and go out there more often. But you really just want to scrape out all of those dead bees in the lower entrance. Even if you have another point of ventilation, like a screened bottom or something, bees need to be able to leave to go on cleansing flights. So it's really good to scrape out the dead bees from the entrance. And don't be alarmed if you see a ton of dead bees in that lower entrance. It's just what's happening right now. The winter bees are going to carry your hive through the winter. They have their body makeup is different. They have different fat deposits. So all of those bees that were born earlier that aren't really the winter bees, they're going to be dying, and that's just what happens. Hopefully you don't see the queen down in there with the bees that you're scooping out. And you want to keep going out there, especially if it is snowing out, and make sure that there is ventilation for that hive. So food, ventilation, if you have one of those cozies on your hive, for most of the United States, it's really just, you could put it on if it's been really windy and cold, but if you're getting a week of nice warm weather, I would take it off and let the sun warm up your hive. And it's always fun to sit there and check on the bees, watch them going on the cleansing flight and stuff. And yes, you use your hive tool to clear the entrance. So you're going to have, that just little lower entrance, and you want to just take your hive tool in there and just scrape out those dead bees. Hive tool really works best. I don't know what else works as well or better than a hive tool to get those guys out. And you really want to keep on top of it, so then later on, it's not just like a whole bunch of gross dead bees down there, because they can get moldy and yucky, and you don't want to start growing mold inside your hive so early on already. Um, Michael says, I was out closing hives up for the winter. My first time without a suit or gloves. They were so sweet, not aggressive, not stung once, felt good. It does feel really nice to check on your bees and to not have that fear to get to that point. And you don't have that fear. It also, I find that I am more sensitive, like I'm more aware of everywhere I put my, it's really great. I highly recommend beekeeping with no gloves on if you can. If you swell up badly and you think you might be like allergic to bee stings, don't follow this advice. But otherwise, it is really nice to keep bees with no gloves on. If you really need to, latex gloves are okay too. But I don't know. It might kind of piss off the bees, that smell of the latex. To be able to, people think that you're squishing bees when they watch my videos and I'm putting things back together, but I'm just not. I am fully aware of what I'm doing. And when you squish a bee, you smell it. Other bees smell it. They will be more aggressive. They will fly up at you. They get aggressive towards you. But if you just move slowly and when you wear no gloves, you're just more cautious because not only are you squishing a bee, but then you're going to get stung. So you're just so much more cautious, and it is easier to not squish bees when you don't have those thick, clunky gloves on. You need them sometimes, but it is really not ideal to have to wear them. And then when you, sorry, my answer, we were decorating a Christmas tree. We got a real one this year. The benefit to living in Pennsylvania is like the home of Christmas tree farms. They said that there's 1,400 Christmas tree farms in the state of Pennsylvania, and possibly one of the biggest. There's more Christmas tree farms in PA than anywhere else in the country, or one of the biggest states for Christmas tree farms. Anyway, after that, I took some branches and made a wreath, and I haven't watched. Then I just like ran to put my son up to bed and came down here just in time for 8 o'clock. And now my hands are covered in sap. That's why they look brown. Anyway, it's really great to not wear gloves when beekeeping. Cheryl says, I have 2 inches of insulation under the cover, then a Ceracell top feeder with dry sugar in it underneath the insulation box. Should I be concerned about condensation forming on the bottom? I don't think so. I mean, the condensation is really where the heat from inside the hive is meeting with the cold air from outside the hive. So I would think that the insulation is supposed to cut back on that amount of condensation, but I would think that the condensation would still be building up underneath that board that's touching your outer cover and would be dripping down onto the feed, and you should be fine with that. I don't know what's inside your insulation box, but that would be the only thing I would recommend keeping an eye on, is just to keep mold from forming inside your hive. Because some of those quilt boxes and things, they can really just get wet really fast and get really moldy and start to do more harm than good inside the hive. But I'm going to check out that feeder. I haven't bought a feeder yet, and I've been looking at all the different kinds. I've just always hated. I've made feeders in the past, and I have really hate some, but I've gotten a few recommendations and try a couple of different kinds of feeders for next year. and let you guys know which ones I like best. I do not know what moisture boards are made out of. Do you know? Sometimes I can't tell if people are quizzing me or not. I have no idea what moisture boards are made out of. No. Curious Quiz says, I drown the least bees in the little two compartment floating dock kind of construction. Yeah, that's the kind that I like best, is the kind that has the little floater inside. But the Galena Farms has one of those, and that's the one that I recommend for syrup. But for the winter time, I'm not exactly sure what I'll be putting the feed in. My goal is to really just try like all the different ways for the different hives and see how it goes. All right, 8:56. I am going to head out. Thanks to everyone for joining me. If you are in my course, I'm going to be going live then on Tuesday, not next week, but the week after. And stay tuned for more videos. Not much to talk about really for videos this time of year. Since I haven't gotten my bees yet, it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like all the things to talk about without bees I've talked about. But if you have suggestions, let me know. A lot of people have asked to talk about queen breeding. I just don't like to talk about queen breeding because it's, you just don't need that many queen bees for most people. So to like graft and stuff seems unnecessary, and then you're just doing it just for the sake of doing it, and then all those queen bees die. So I just kind of feel bad encouraging it. But we'll see what I get into in the springtime. I'll probably maybe do some videos about things you can make, maybe some candles and infusions and stuff. Oh, I do have, so I'm going to make a video about the keeper's hive, that beehive that you don't have to list supers off of, but it's still a Langstroth style beehive. And I'll do a video about the Beaver Hive and their thermal camera that they sent me. I'm going to do one about the Beekeeping for Dummies book. If you're looking for a beekeeping book, that's really the one that everyone recommends. And I wanted to just show you what it looks like inside. It is the one I recommend too, but honestly, I never read it. It's like, who wants to read a black and white, no picture book about beekeeping when it's so easy to like look at a YouTube video and watch somebody doing it? Um, This brand is Vever. Let's see the VEVOR. Don't know how much they're charging for it. Works well. I mean, I've only had it for about a couple weeks, but we were pointing it all around the house to find the drafty spots for because man, this house is freezing. It's just so cold in here, especially cold in my bedroom. The rest of the house is like 68, and then my bedroom is like 62, and that's cold for me. Thank you, Junebug, Vevor, VEVOR. Seed Sower says, this is my first winter with bees. Any pointers? Yeah, leave them alone. That's really my biggest pointer to almost every beekeeper is like the worst thing you can be is an over eager beekeeper. You often people do more harm than good keeping bees and just moving things around, opening things up, and just like causing trouble when there wasn't already trouble. So Just try your best. And my other tip is to do things too early than too late. If don't try to like do things perfectly, or just take forever to figure out what to do. It's better to do it not perfect, but just too early than to try to figure out this perfect answer. There's like a ton of ways to do things. You can have quilt boxes and moisture boards and bee cozies and a bajillion things for your hive. But when it comes down to it, they're either healthy or they're not. And if they're not healthy, they're not going to properly cluster. It doesn't really matter what you do for them. So just don't bother them too much, and keep them healthy. Which, I mean, it's too late now. Either you kept them healthy during the spring and summer and fall, or you didn't. And now it's just wait and see. Sure, there isn't a ghost in your bedroom? No, there are 4 large windows in my bedroom and a door to an outside deck in my bedroom. And we haven't put up any curtains, and the cold from these windows, and then the closet and the bathroom is freezing. And it's just like my husband, I forget what he keeps telling me. It's like the door to the attic is in our bedroom. So it's just like all this heat is going up there, I guess, and there's just no insulation. And he wants to put some foam or something in there because he said he doesn't want to close it up because you need ventilation. You don't want it to be able to get moldy and stuff. You need airflow, but it's just really drafty, and it's just a really terrible time to buy a house when you're coming from Hawaii. Just not enough time to properly get this house ready for the cold. It was 80 degrees on Halloween, and then we moved in the next day, and it was like just went down to the 50s, and then now it's in the 30s. My poor husband, he fixes generators. He's an electrician, but that's primarily what he's doing right now, is fixing generators. So he's been outside, and like just a freezing cold in the 30s. There was snow on the ground yesterday where he was at, and he's just exhausted and freezing. And it's just slow moving getting this stuff done. Try a heated blanket. That sounds lovely. We do have a fireplace. We just got it serviced, and now we just started having fires as of Sunday. It's been very nice. Now we just need some firewood. All right. Nice talking to you guys. Wish I could see your faces too. See you next month, and have a good weekend.